Hello everyone, this is Cobalt. This is the next video in my character analysis series for Brawlhalla. I'll be doing a brief introduction of the character followed by a frame data analysis on their signatures. And if you want to skip all this and get straight into the info, there's a timestamp in the description, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep up with the release of your favorite legend. There are codes in the comments section if anybody would like some. In these analysis, I want to focus solely on the character's signatures. Light attack combos are covered much more in depth than I ever could elsewhere, and function pseudo-comparably for all characters of that weapon class. So I'm not going to be discussing the general neutral of the character with their weapons unless it pertains in some way to their signatures. Firstly, I want to give clear descriptions of the terminology I'll be using. Startup frames are the amount of frames that happen after a move has begun until the first hitbox of the move becomes active. Active frames are the duration of frames that the move contains hitboxes that can collide with your opponent. FAF, or First Actionable Frame, is the first frame available where your character is able to move again after the move has been started. For all this data, I use the character's jump to display the first actionable frame. Lastly, on miss refers to the move not making contact with an opponent, and on hit refers to the move making contact with an opponent. I'm going to be doing my analysis today on the next newcomer to Brawlhalla, Arcadia. Arcadia was, in her youth, selected to be the new queen of the Fangwild from a mighty sword. Questioning the sword's decision, she fled and for many years traveled with her beetle through the Fangwild. But when Dusk attacked the Fangwild, she found it necessary to defend it from his evil. She defeated him after a 3-day-long battle with her exceptional power and took her rightful place as the new queen of the Fangwild. Arcadia's weapons are Spear and Greatsword, and the fact that we received another Greatsword legend wasn't exactly the most requested thing, but also wasn't exactly surprising considering the previous release schedule whenever BMG drops a new weapon. Spear recently received a buff on Sidelight, which I think will be beneficial on the kit. Greatsword is still a meta-relevant weapon as much as I think some others may disagree, but we'll see how it plays out in the long run. Her stat distribution is 7 strength, 7 dexterity, 4 defense, and 4 speed, and if you know how I feel about dexterity or watched my dexterity video, which is linked above, I think it's a complete waste of a stat spread for Arcadia. Greatsword has virtually no added benefit from higher dexterity, and Spear has very limited benefits, but anyway, I love her character design, and the new skins that she has are really cool. So, will the Queen of the Fangwild be able to tame the competitive metagame? Well, let's find out. Let's start with her Spear. Spear's side sig has 26 frames of startup, active frames from 27 to 52 with an FAF of 81. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. On hit, the move converts into a second and third hit with additional active frames from 60 to 67 and 71 to 75 with a new FAF of 92. Arcadia summons Domo, her mighty war beetle, and charges forward ferociously. Should the move make contact, Domo knocks the opponent upwards, followed by a finishing hit from Arcadia. This move has pretty high startup, honestly. When compared to Ember's bow side sig, this is a whole 10 frames slower. It has a few more active frames, but the hitbox size is pretty small and the FAF is incredibly high. The frame data on this sig doesn't make her kit look too good so far, but hopefully some others will make up for that. Spear neutral sig has 15 frames of startup, active frames from 16 to 27 with an FAF of 48. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move make contact, it converts into a second hit with active frames from 45 to 54 and a new FAF of 72. Arcadia thrusts her spear upwards surrounded by fairy aura, sending the opponent upward and a second hit that sends them upward again. This sig has slightly below average startup and FAF with a decent amount of active frames, so it's honestly not bad. It hits grounded opponents when stacked and has some decent vertical coverage. Neutral sigs tend to be the fastest ones, and this is no exception. Spear down sig has 24 frames of startup, active frames from 25 to 60 with an FAF of 44. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. Should the move make contact, the hitboxes cancel and send the opponent slightly upward and setting them up for a follow-up hit. The signature is very unique, comparable to the likes of Yumiko's Wisp signatures, which provide lingering hitboxes and the ability to act before they are finished. It's an excellent zoning tool and threatens the range immediately in front of her. It does have slower startup than average, but I think its utility will help make up for that, and could potentially provide some kill confirms at later damage ranges. It's a setup tool as a combo starter, and I think it'll function incredibly well on her kit. Next up is her Greatsword. Greatsword's side sig has 22 frames of startup, active frames from 23 to 27 with an FAF of 57. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. However, this signature does provide some unique properties. If held for a minimum charge time, the side signature results in a simple swing of the Greatsword forward. But if charged for 24 frames, the signature changes and sends a lengthy projectile forward. This version of the signature has 35 frames of startup, active frames from 36 to 63, and a new FAF of 70. The projectile cancels as soon as it makes contact with an opponent, as many do. I think that this signature has some unique properties for applying pressure, since you can react to a dodge, hold the charge slightly longer, and then send out the projectile. It's a little slower in terms of frame data, but I think it has a unique utility that only a couple other signatures have comparably. Greatsword neutral sig has 16 frames of startup, active frames from 17 to 32 with an FAF of 51. It functions the same on miss as it does on hit. Arcadia thrusts her sword upward into the air with tremendous force. If the move is charged for 16 frames, Arcadia jumps upward instead. The frame data then adjusts to active frames from 21 to 37 and a new FAF of 70. It catches jumping opponents as well as those recovering high. It's got decent frame data, slightly below average startup, and about average FAF. It catches grounded opponents as well if stacked. It's a pretty standard neutral signature with straightforward coverage and could function well out of Greatsword aerials or light attacks. Greatsword down sig has 21 frames of startup, active frames from 22 to 57 with an FAF of 46. It functions differently on miss than it does on hit. On hit, the hitboxes cancel at frame 33 with the same FAF. If you notice, this move functions almost identically to her spear down signature, which provides her a unique position for signatures as a setup tool since the hitboxes of the move last longer than the move's FAF. I think it's a very useful signature, though it does have slightly lower startup, and if predicted, it can be punished by jumping over it. It does, however, provide excellent ledge coverage and has loads of utility and potential as a combo starter due to the ability to yield conversions. So, overall, her sigs are pretty average in terms of their frame data with the exception of 2. Her startup is pretty par for the course with the exception of her neutral sigs that tend to have faster frame data anyway. The unique options that are offered to her by her down signatures on both Spear and Greatsword are incredibly useful, especially for weapons that combo as well as these two. Her sigs have reasonable FAF for the most part, but I do think that her Spear side sig is a less good version of Ember's bow side sig due to its slower startup and significantly higher FAF. But her neutral sigs do offer her some good coverage above her that I think is beneficial, especially for weapons like these. She's an incredibly cool character, and I absolutely love the design choices that they went with for her. The animations just keep getting better, and this is no exception. I think she'll do quite well, though the Greatsword has kind of fallen off in the competitive meta recently, so hopefully that'll be corrected sometime soon. As soon as a new legend drops again, I'll do another one of these, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the release of the next legend, and hope to see you guys back for the next one. Once again, I'm Cobalt, and thanks for watching.